Here's the newest edition of the Berserk Roundup, where I cover the last few chapters. I've covered all the continuation like this, so check out the others if you've not seen them. This video rounds off 373 and 374, which completes this strange new volume, the first to continue the story beyond Miura's passing. And the continuation has largely taken on a unique quality of its own. This cover for volume 42 has very loud colours. You can tell that this is the same team as Duranki, which was a very colourful fantasy world. We have Guts swinging the Dragon Slayer, which didn't do anything to stop Griffith from taking Casca, and now we have the Beast of Darkness and its emergence from Guts' mind. But let's get into the content. Starting with 373, this one is called The Rusty Iron Rings That Bind, and it's 21 pages. The point of view is interesting because just last chapter we were in Casca and Griffith's perspective, and the chapter before that we were with the group. To go back to the group for 373 marks a large change, because so far Studio Gaga and Koji Mori have been producing Berserk in a way which has tried to maintain the visage that Miura's Berserk had. And Miura never cut this quickly between characters like this, never just one episode at a time anyway. It's just something interesting to note, especially when bearing in mind Mori said that he wouldn't fudge the story and would only tell what he was told by Miura. The inconsistency in this case being a good thing. We're cutting straight to the chase. In reading this chapter, I really appreciated that. With the chapter that's only just come out, we found out that we are in the Fantasia arc Exile to the East chapter, or Escape to the East, whatever it might be when it's officially translated. With the chapter we're in now, we start with some general thoughts and processing from the crew. The Beast is kind of having this tug of war with Guts. Shiake is using her magic to hone in on Casca's location, which will allow them to hone in on Falconia. Isidro is growing up from his immature, strong-headed character into a more humbled boy. That's nice to see, because up until now, he has acted way younger than this, and it seems now is the time for change. There are a few panels here that are dynamic and immerse us into the scene in a way that works better than other, less recent chapters. The first glimpse of Shiake preparing for the magical rite, and the moment her astral body leaves the ship, are these wide-angled lens-style drawings that suck your focal attention to just the right places. Guts stands, grabs his sword, and is drawn as though the beast within him is unleashed, and only kept at bay by his unconsciousness. It's very interesting because with this in mind, and some of Miura's final words, being that Guts breaks away from the group and leaves, it leaves this next chapter with a really strange endpoint. Moving on to 374, this chapter completes the first volume without Miura, which is kind of a depressing note. We have to take the wins where we can, and this chapter is also the beginning of the Odyssey to the East, Escape to the East, Exile to the East, whatever. And this release specifically is called The Sleeping Black Beast Biding Its Time. This is the beginning of the second leg of the Fantasia arc. They originally said the first 6 episodes under them would be the end of the Elf Island chapter, but that puts us right in the middle of it. And even if we took that to be the case, as I did when I made this video, we now have this episode with the caption, "A New Chapter Begins," and we get the name drop too. So maybe this marks the start. Maybe it started a bit ago, but we will find out for sure when volume 42 hits, either way. We also recently learned that these chapters are, as you'd expect, completed by the team pretty consistently, with the weight between them actually being created by the editorial department. This has happened once in the past that we were made aware of, with this release in particular having been completed for a while. We got that one chapter that was split into 2 across 2 months. A single chapter in the volume halved into 2 batches of 10 pages and released that way by the magazine and not by Miura's design. It's interesting that they have the final control in terms of release. It makes you wonder just how far ahead the team actually is. The next chapter goes back a little and shows Isidro and Serpico being ambushed as their talk comes to an end. The colour page reflects their talk. It's a relaxed portrait with the warmth coming off the ship and Puck's glow coming off the side boat there. This gives off massive insert poster vibes, and they have a lot to choose from when it comes to that. They've released colour pages for like every other chapter. Here we get 21 pages again, and there's a lot of talk as the Kushin apprehend the crew. We get a little nugget that the magic users cannot use magic anymore. If that's the case though, then how can Shiake? Well, let me just triple down on this theory that the Dragon Slayer has weaved its astral web and not only enables Guts to kill strong astral creatures, though not all as seen by Griffith, but it also acts as an anchor. At first I thought this was just for Puck and Evilera, but maybe Shiake herself received benefit from it too. That's also to say nothing of the brand. But yeah, she went from Flora's spirit tree to following Guts for all that time, so that's how she could do it. To be honest, in the first instance, I thought she could just do it anywhere, due to the nature of the world being dictated by the 4 elements, which are visualized as the 4 elemental kings, like 150 chapters ago. So yeah, I have no idea why the Elfhelm folk have lost their powers, there's no explanation offered, and it doesn't explain why Isma disappeared as well, she wasn't from Elfhelm. But anyway, as the threat approaches and we see just how many of them there are, we actually manage to see glimpses of both Rickett and Salat. So it seems that whole side of things we got 30 chapters ago, which ended with Rickett and that group going to the Bakiraka homeland, had been kind of circumnavigated with the speeding nature of time that Elfhelm enabled. And so we've cut straight to the chase with hundreds and hundreds of soldiers and Bakiraka ready to fight and here to find Guts. This has been a bloodless effort, and though I was really looking forward to that homeland reveal, which I feel like Miura absolutely would have indulged in, at least we get a true example of Mori only telling the story of the chapters he knew. But some liberties are being taken to allow this to happen. For example, Azan is just completely a retired character now, and I'm not sure there's room for him to be taken seriously again, with him just allowing what should have seemed like certain death to take him completely without restraint. We also have Serpico on deck whilst Chiake is vulnerable in her magic right. He's up here whilst that's happening, and even says how he left his weapon in his room, despite never being unarmed for the entirety of the time on the Seahorse, which is very convenient. I guess I'll just have to make do with the architecture of the boat. After all, Isidro and Serpico make use of the terraced decking to escape the Kushin. I'm not even trying to be sarcastic when I say that using that spatial awareness is a big improvement from some of the chapters past. Apart from that, we finally have Guts awaken from his delirium, the chains of the beast being broken whilst Kushin chains restrain him, with Rickett right in that room. So the next chapter is lined up to have Chiake find Falconia, Guts go mad, maybe even taking out a Kushin or two, but be pulled back by seeing Rickett or by Chiake, or a mix of the two. We're lined up for info dumps on Rickett's story, Falconia's current state, exactly how much time has passed, and then we obviously have an entire army out in the middle of the sea, which is a ridiculous concept on such a long voyage, but that's beside the point at this stage. The point is, we are getting direction to the end here, with even more of the things needed for the final battle ticked off the bucket list. Like, do you remember how Midland was this landlocked city, and Falconia was as well, and all of a sudden now there's a harbour? That was the first shortcut, and now that this entire army seems to be at sea, we have our slipstream to the ending. We have the reason for the fight, being Casca, we have the means for the fight, being the Kushin, and we have the propellant to get there, which is the reunion with Rickett and Erica. Why are they the propellant? Well, after all, Guts said Rickett could never really hate Griffith, and look at how far he's come since then. But there is one thing, one little caveat to all of this, and that comes from something Miura once said. In his final interview, the last footage we have of him, he says that Guts will leave the group entirely. And with Guts and team, and now an entire army, in the middle of the sea, how on earth is Guts gonna leave? This level of convergence almost forces the story to move onwards. But yeah, that's the last 2 chapters. Not quite as thrilling or as exciting as I'd hoped, but especially interesting to glean the details from. Especially if this really was what Miura was going to do, because Guts has a long swim ahead of him. But yeah, that marks the end of this strange new volume, one which even Mori seems to agree with. That was sourced from Az from SkullKnight.net, who put together a list of interesting translations from a bunch of interviews that Mori has given recently. Apparently this Exile to the East chapter of Fantasia is the last chapter of the story. Mori had heard the ending from Miura over a dozen times, and after his passing, a single note of story developments was found that didn't even have to do with the ending. It's an ending which Mori believes can only be told in manga format, which is why he didn't go ahead with simple illustrations. Even he thinks of the continuation with mixed feelings, saying that as the only one who knew the ending, he felt it must be told, even though Berserk ordinarily should not exist without Miura. He goes into detail about not wanting to draw for it, how he meets with the assistants, tells them how the story goes, oversees the manuscripts, and tells them of how Miura might have drawn some things if it needed editing before passing it back. He says he only tells Miura's words. He feels mixed on continuing the chapter numbers and the volume numbers, saying that a manga belongs to its creator and shouldn't be continued. But he feels the pain of a story without an ending. Because of this, he's already told all the assistants and Hakusensha everything he knows, specifically in case he dies, but says that his burden isn't too great as he is purely in just a supervising role. In the final translation, it's revealed that he will finish a manga which he talked about making to Miura across one of the many phone calls that they had. He also said that after this manga concludes, that is when he would create Mori and Ken, the manga which details their entire friendship, and something we got a sad glimpse of when Miura unfortunately passed. What did you guys think? Comment your thoughts down below and subscribe for more Berserk roundups. Also look forward to a Berserk and Dark Souls video that I'm working on, which should be out soon. Thank you for watching, thanks to my patrons, and everyone else, have a great night.